So I want to share with you today a story of generational change. Not just how things change between generations, but how sometimes in change, things actually stay the same. So here we are in 1989. Milli Vanilli, Madonna on the charts. Back to the Future 2 is at the box office. And of course, the Berlin Wall is falling down, along with communism and the end of the Cold War. So a pretty significant year all around. Somewhat less significantly, somewhere in the quiet suburbs of east of Johannesburg, was a boy watching his television. Kind of television made out of thick, solid wood, big glass round screen that made a kind of a boing sound when you turned it on. When I got the chance, I'd be watching something interesting like Airwolf, MacGyver. When I didn't get the choice, maybe Murder, She Wrote or the news. That was my primary source of digital entertainment. That same device looked very different to my dad. When he saw it, he saw inside the TV, a bit like the Matrix. He saw cathode ray tubes, he saw electronic switches, he saw capacitors. And it's because he's an electronic engineer. That was his thing. He even saw sometimes a fun weekend job of soldering something back onto the board. So let's fast forward 30 years to today. The boys and girls of today are using their primary source of digital entertainment, phone, tablet, and they're chatting, socializing, influencing, or being influenced. They're even telegramming each other, I just found out, which is not stop, what I thought it was, stop. That device looks a little bit different to me. When I see it, I see inside the device, a little bit like the Matrix. I see the code behind. I see compilers. I see quality control and app release strategies. I even see web services and cloud infrastructure sitting behind it. That's because I'm the kind of person who builds that type of technology. So things have really changed. They've actually stayed the same. If you're not necessarily a television addict, maybe you can look at another parallel industry. So back in the 60s and 70s, as they were sort of developing or commercial flying was becoming a little bit more popular and accessible, pilots were, I missed a piece. I should go back to this. Actually, let me start with that. So let's talk a bit more about the TV. When the designers and engineers were building those original TVs, they were thinking a lot about how people could interact with them. And originally, the engineers would take a screwdriver, a little copper screw, and they would twist it so that the tuner would change and they would change the channel. Worked well for them. They all had a tool belt on, some screwdrivers. They started to realize probably fairly quickly that most people don't really want to interact with their TV that way. So they started to create remote controls, which ironically in the beginning weren't very remote. They were tethered with big thick cables and clunky buttons to push. But they evolved that a little bit over time and they created things that are a little bit more user-friendly, and we ended up with this. Something that we're all kind of familiar with, maybe not the best example of a human device interface, but something that at least 70% of us know how to use. I won't mention any names. So the point there is that we've evolved the way that we interface with our technology devices. So let me go back to my second analogy. As pilots were sort of learning and commercial flying was becoming more popular, pilots were given this type of interface, very tactical or very tactile. When you pulled a lever, you could actually feel the flaps moving up and down. When you pushed a button, you could hear and feel the landing gear popping out. That's great for pilots. They liked it. That also evolved, and if you've seen a modern cockpit, it's pretty much the same. It's just a digital version of that. It's not necessarily any simpler. The average US pilot needs about 2,000 flying hours to qualify commercially after they've done all their training. It's not a simple thing. But where's it going to be in 5 or 10 years? I think somebody's just going to push a button. Plane's going to fly. Maybe that person's not even in the plane. They're sitting in a bunker somewhere pushing a button. These are the lessons that we need to keep in mind. Why is that relevant for us? Well, in this room and at this conference, we are essentially the designers and engineers of geospatial technology. And what we like to see is the inside, the matrix version of what we build. How many of you still pop open the command prompt to type out some DOS commands? Maybe at the very least you like to see the tools you're running give you feedback. 32% complete with this task, executing that task. You know, that's what we like to see. Or maybe you've progressed, or maybe you're a bit younger and you're really looking forward to this kind of interface. There's many buttons and toolbars and pop-ups that you can possibly get your hands on. It's not really what the people we're building our tools for want. So the message is, I think we need to start thinking about how we can create products for users based on what they need rather than what we want. So let me give you a couple of examples. The first one is, I have two very small children, so I'm going to use them as an excuse for why we order in once, twice, or 3 times a week. So to do that, I open my phone, I go to Uber Eats, I go to Rockamama's, and I choose a bacon, cheese, and guac burger. It's a good choice. Lunch is coming. 30 minutes later, it arrives at my house. Now think about what's happening behind the scenes there. A whole lot of fancy geospatial technology. It knows my location, it knows the location of the store, it knows the real-time location of the driver, it assigns a driver based on his relative location. Once he picks up the food, he drives using real-time traffic-based optimized routing. It's pretty cool. What did I do? I clicked a button, it arrived. Right? That's the interface that I want. What about a more corporate example? So we work in a kind of enterprise environment. People make decisions based on information. So we're all pretty excited about creating WYSI dashboards or providing them an interface like ArcGIS Pro, but really we want to give them something a little bit more simple. So some of you will have a boardroom as fancy as this. I don't know if that qualifies, but why has that boardroom not got something on it? Why does it not have a digital boardroom? Integrated, real-time information delivered in a very simple interface for people who need it. Yes, there is a map on there, but it's not really a GIS. There's hardly any buttons. It's just delivering the information that they need at the time to make their decisions. So the last example I want to give you is a concept that I have here. I'm just looking at my phone, pops up, and it says I need to leave now for my meeting at 12 based on current road conditions. Okay, so I click on the notification. It gives me a couple of options. Maybe I want to optimize my route based on my carbon footprint, or I want to reduce my fuel spend, or I want to maybe not impact people with the noise of my vehicle, something like that. I can quickly change my weightings, or I can leave them at the default and click Start Driving. Well, what's different? Well, in 5, 10 years, maybe we'll have a debate later, but I'm not actually going to do anything. It's going to drive on its own. That is a geospatial interface, and what I want to leave with you all is when we come back here, or our next get-together, I would like you to present back the types of solutions you're providing your users that are embedding our clever spatial technology, but delivering it in a way that users need and not the way that we want. And that's it. Thank you.